just wanted to just say we're really lucky. We have Fred Dodd here. He's actually the owner of IZE. I met Fred when I came on our first trip in Blue Creek first, and he followed me out here to IZE. So I heard some of the stories. They're really interesting. And then this afternoon, while you guys were doing all the fun field work, I was actually talking to Fred, and he told me about the history of the island and how he came to be the owner of the island and some of the natural history. Part of the island. Well, I mean, yeah, he doesn't own the whole island, but it's actually a really interesting story. I don't know if you have to hear about Blue Creek, because we haven't gone to Blue Creek, but that was a different story. That was really cool. So I know from Fred's a herpetologist by training. He does that. Yeah, cool, isn't it? So I think,
which is the study of what?
Reptiles.
Herbs.
Amphibians.
So from my knowledge, Fred is a naturalist, likes adventure travel, photography, and regrouping before our trip comes to the conclusion. That also gives us one more day to collect anything else we may want to do or discuss anything else. But for today's evening programming, we thought we'd have Fred talk to us and also ask any questions you may have as well. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right, so where do I begin? Back in 1970, it was February actually, 1970, so it was about 47 years ago. I was doing graduate work at the University of Northern Arizona in herpetology, and needed a place to go and do my research. I had done all of my classwork and everything, and now I needed to do my research and get a dissertation in, so I decided Venezuela was where I was going to go. That would be the country that I could find the most herbs, and it would be great. So I got in my van and headed for Venezuela, and I made it as far as British Honduras, which is now Belize. Yeah. So back in 1970, British Honduras was definitely a little British colony. There was basically nothing here. The police rode around on bicycles. There was no pavement in the country, certainly no stop signs, no stoplights, no TV, radio, yes, but no movies or anything like that. It was very, very primitive. So I ended up going down through the Hummingbird Highway. Did you fly here or did you drive here? On the bus?
Yeah, the bus. Yeah.
Okay. So you know the road I came down. However, that road now is a much nicer road than it was in 1970. It was probably about 8 feet wide and had 3-foot deep potholes, every 6 feet. It literally would take hours and hours to come down, to get to Dan Briga. Well, I pulled into Dan Briga town, got out to the end of the road there, and there was the beach, and looking, okay, now what? And this little boy came up to me and said, hey, mister, there's all these beautiful islands out here, and I can arrange for you to go out to these islands and and check them out. And you can go out there, you have to stay for a week, and we'll give you basically a book of matches and a spear gun, and good luck. We'll be back in a week to pick you up. So he introduced me to the owner at the time of Pelican Beach Hotel, which is probably the larger of all the hotels on the mainland in Dan Briga. And it was the first day of opening. So we got in the boat. It was an old inboard boat that, it seemed like we could barely run, but after a couple of hours of chugging through the surf, he dropped us off on Caribou Caye. Did you go to Caribou Caye?
Yeah, some of us that we're going to go tomorrow.
Okay. All right, so those of you who know the island know that it's very small, but back when I first went on the island, it was probably a good, maybe, 4 or 5 acres or so, 2 or 3 times at least the size that it is now. We're going to get into the reason why that is in a few minutes, but let me just keep going with this. So we went to Caribou Caye. We spent a week on the island. Had kind of our doubts what we were going to eat. The coconuts looked good and the hermit crabs around, and that's digesting. But surprisingly, there were conch and lobster everywhere. I mean, literally, you could have your fill of lobster. And we did. And we did use the spear gun. We got fish. And we had a great time. It was absolutely fantastic. We never saw another person, never saw another boat, nothing. There was nothing out there but just us. And so after that trip, I went back to Arizona, and I was very, very close with my major professor in herpetology. And he said, Fred, you always have that entrepreneurial spirit. Maybe you should think about starting a business with something that you're really passionate about and you really love to do. And because he said, and this is back now in the early 1970s, he was saying, when you get your Ph.D. in biology, it's very difficult. I don't know what it's like now, but it's very difficult at that time to find a position at the university somewhere.
It's even worse now.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It was very, very difficult. He said, when we have an opening in our biology department, we get over 500 applicants. And many of these applicants are much more qualified than somebody who's just getting out of school. So hearing that, I said, oh, geez, maybe I should look into something else. And right along that same time, the Boston Zoological Society, Boston is where I'm from, the Boston Zoological Society.
There's a lot of people from Boston.
So, well then the Boston Zoological Society and the NBC offered me a position as I was going to be the curator of herpetology for the brand new Boston Zoo. And I thought I died and went to heaven. That was the next best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to be the curator. But in the meantime, there wasn't any zoo. There wasn't even really any real plans to get this thing off the ground. Nothing started. So they decided that I could be in charge of the birds, the aviary, at the Stone Zoo. Those are from Boston. I'm sure you know Stone and Mass, Stone Zoo. Anyway. So one day, after about 3 or 4 months of working there and making about $2 an hour, I was coming into the aviary, this huge glass building, and there was a walkway that kind of S-shaped its way down from a higher level down to a lower level, and then you exited out the bottom of the aviary. But one morning I was there around the duck pool, which had sand around this little cement pool, and I was raking up the sand, and this family came in, and I could, overhear them talking and everything. And this little boy was saying to his dad, Dad, what's that man doing? I said, son, he's cleaning up after the birds, and that's what's going to happen to you if you don't go to college. And I said, okay, this is a light bulb went on, yes. I better try for something else. So I thought, well, what do I love to do? My major professor was right. Do something you're passionate about. If you do something you're passionate about, you'll succeed. Don't give up, just keep going. So I decided, I love nature photography. I love traveling, and I love teaching. So I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to go back to British Honduras. I'm going to, start doing expeditions for people there, and I'm going to do photography. And we're going to travel around, and I'm going to, teach tropical biology, and, what I do then as a youngster, to the people who come on the trip. So I put together an ad, put it in the Boston Globe, and voila! A couple of weeks later, I had about 12 or 13 people who wanted to go on a 3-week experimental trip to the Yucatan. And at the time, I didn't concentrate on Belize. It was Yucatan, Mexico, Guatemala, the Petén area of Guatemala, and then all of British Honduras. The trip was great fun. We rented 3 Land Rovers. We basically ate out of cans, dried food, whatever we could round up, and we just headed out. Parts unknown. Look, here's a dirt road, let's see where that goes. We had 4-wheel drive vehicles. Now back then, there were no buses, there were very few cars. Most of the vehicles on the road were Land Rovers. And so we rented 3 Land Rovers, I said, and drove all around the country. We had a great time. And whenever it would get dark, wherever we were, we'd get out of the car, pitch a tent, this was it. That was our evening, and then the next morning, get up and go somewhere else. And we photographed and collected and, caught and released, lizards and snakes and turtles, and saw all kinds of, magarundis, and we even saw margay in that first trip, and howler monkeys, and it was like heaven. It was super great. We just got blessed. So I said, this is it. But I can't go back working at the zoo because I can't live on $2 an hour. And so when I was in school, I put myself through school. I had a painting company. I painted houses, and that made a lot more money than $2 an hour. So I went back, continued painting houses. In the meantime, putting out that expedition thing, the Boston Globe, Audubon magazine. We just started, wherever I could afford to, put ads in different papers and so on. And trips started coming. People started coming, and we would, narrow down where we were going to go. We got a little more organized and set up different hotels, and I worked deals with the people here in the country, and headed out to, with our groups, we started using Caribou Caye for about the first 2 or 3 years. And we would, as you are on Water Caye and we go over to Caribou Caye for a visit, we would do just the opposite. We were on Caribou Caye and we would come to Water Caye for a visit. And at the time, it looked nothing like it does now. It was completely wild, run over with vegetation. And it was, again, not substantially, but larger than it is now. Okay, it has, felt the effects of some erosion, which we'll talk about. But so we started coming here, and we were basically camping. We set up tents, and it was just at that point now it was just different lay people. Then I got a call from a professor at the University of Toronto. Now, bear in mind, I think my largest group was like 13 people. So I got a call from a professor at the University of Toronto and said, we have a consortium of colleges here. We have Carleton and Guelph and Toronto, and we'd like you to run an expedition for us to British Honduras. I said, oh, no problem. Yeah, fine. Yeah. How many people do you have? Well, we have 152 people. 150? Did you say 152 people? I said, yeah. I said, of course we can do that. Absolutely, not a problem. So, the main mode of transportation, since, remember I told you there were no buses here at the time, were these Bedford trucks. A Bedford truck is like a big freight truck. It's got the cab, it's got like a canopy top, and it would have wooden bench seats in the back of the truck. So I rented, I think it was 7 of those trucks. I think 2 or 3 of them just carried luggage alone. And what we did is we took the 152 people and we divided them up between the rainforest of Blue Creek, a kind of a semi-deciduous forest up in the Hummingbird Highway toward Belmont Pond. And we put a group up there, and we had a group out here on South Water Caye. And we had like a basic tenting colony out in this whole area. And again, it worked great. Everything in it was a success. Everybody loved it, and I thought, yes, I'm on the road. Now I decided, well, you know what? Why am I spending hundreds, thousands of dollars putting ads in papers like magazines like, National Wildlife at the time, Audubon magazine. It was very, very expensive to advertise to get 2 or 3 people. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go find the professors. I'll get the professors, let them get the people. And so that's exactly what I did. I put together 144 slides in a carousel, called up different biology departments. At this time now, back in the early 70s, it wasn't the schools weren't traveling like they are now. I know when I was in school, in graduate school, we didn't have these kind of field trips. The only field trip we'd have was for maybe Saturday to go to the desert to look for tortoises or something. That would be it. So it was kind of a new concept, and it was bring your students to British Honduras. You go free, and we can do research, and you can write about the research, and you can offer this as a course on campus. So that was my new marketing strategy, which is one that, paid off, obviously. And it worked well for many years, but then there were always gaps when colleges couldn't come. Times we were in session, you can't travel. So we would have lull periods. And what was very difficult in those lull periods was the fact that I would have to let the staff go. And that was very difficult for me because I know they depend on me, for their families and their livelihood. So we said, what we'll do? We'll have school groups and we'll have cottage people. So we'll make up some cottages and we'll charge the cottage people much more to offset the price that it costs for operation. And so we started doing just that, having lay people come. And also, as well as we would do like Audubon groups, Sierra Club, Point Rate Birds, or other people, and they would come as well, and we would book them in spaces when schools couldn't travel. But my main love, my main thrust, was the college kids, college groups would come, and in the beginning, I would lead every group and teach every group because many of the professors who came had never even been to the tropics. I don't know, do you know, heard of Dr. John Kreischer? He writes all the tropical field guide books now. And anyway, he got his start coming here with us. But, you know what, I'm digressing. We're supposed to be talking about how I found the island, right? All right, back to the island. So, all right. So Smithsonian came in the, maybe it was the mid to late 70s, came to Carryville Caye, and we could no longer use Carryville Caye. So we came over here and started using South Water Caye. And the property that you're on now, there was only one very small shack on the property here with one caretaker that lived in that shack. And there was nobody over in this direction. So we took down an old schoolhouse up in the valley, took it out here in pieces, and built the University of South Water Caye. And that's where we would house our student groups. At the time, there were many more mangroves than you see now, a lot more vegetation, ground cover. Particularly if you've, I don't know if you've wandered around the island and seen some of the other places where they just basically scarified the earth. I mean, there's just nothing left but sand. And, you know, their concept was that tourists want to come and see beautiful white sand. They don't want to see vegetation all over the place. They don't want to have mangroves blocking the view, harboring flies to try to set, you know, that the mangrove roots collect. You know, it might be a little bit of a sulfur offensive smell or something. So they cleared the mangroves. And then they actually started getting upset with me for not clearing it. But I've got to have myself. I've got to go back a little bit there. When we were over there, using that part of the property, there used to be, as I told you, one caretaker, a man that lived here. He was a very, very dear gentleman. I mean, really like a sweetheart of a guy if there ever was one. And his name was Turtle Dan. I called him Turtle Dan. His name was Dan Leslie. Turtle Dan made his living catching sea turtles. And of course, being a herpetologist, that was like, oh, no, you can't do that. You know, so practically every penny I would ever make, I'd buy sea turtles. So all I did was, you know, buy sea turtles from Turtle Dan, and he thought it was quite humorous, you know. And then one day he said to me, "Hey, Fred, don't you notice what's going on here? He bought that turtle 5 times." And then I realized that these sea turtles do have a pattern. You know, when they go to graze in the daytime, and at night they go to different places to sleep. He figured out these patterns and would set these drift nets. Or when the turtles would be breeding, he would have these drift nets floating with wooden turtles floating on top. So that the sea turtles would think, oh, there's a turtle, I think I'll make with that turtle and get stuck up in the grass in the net. So he used to bring them in. I used to buy them, take them out, let them go. One day he said to me, he said, we get along really great. I really like you. I'm going to give you a piece of my land. Right over here, this strip where, the old greenhouse where I live in there, the top by the bar. Okay. From that little strip, going east to west. And I thought, oh great, this is really nice. I'm going to give me a piece of land. I'm going to live in Turtle Dam out here. I'm going to spend all my money buying turtles. Trying to convince him that we need to catch something else besides turtles, and we need to leave them alone. Which wasn't working out very well, but anyway, so at the time I had a group from the New School of Social Research from New York City, and they were a group of adults, and I was talking to them one night, and I just happened to mention, I'm so psyched, I just got this piece of property from Turtle Dam, and we're going to be able to make a little house and have a little place on the island. And one of the women on the trip came up to me a few minutes later and said, hey, how about this? I'll make a deal with you. I said, really, what? She said, I'll put up the money and I'll build the house. You let me design it, I'll build the house. It's your house. You can rent it, you keep it, you stay there. All I want out of the deal is 2 weeks a year to come down and pay my half. And I thought, sure, that works. So we were off. Her husband started designing that house, and we were getting ready to get going with the project, and I get a phone call. And the phone call is from Mr. Len Bowman, who actually has a little piece of property right down adjacent to the Blue Mountain. And he called me up and says, hey Fred, man, he said, I'm really sorry, but Dan Leslie doesn't own that land. I do. And I heard that you're about to build a house on it. It's my land. And I said, really? He told me that he owns it. He said, no. He thinks he claims it because he's been on it for more than 20 years and he has squatters' rights. And I don't have the heart to throw him off. He's an old man. I don't have the heart to throw him off, so I'm just kind of waiting for him to die and then I'll be back. Now I didn't know what to tell Dan. I can't go to Dan and say, oh, what's happening? They just wait for you to die. But anyway, so he said, you know what? I'm going to let you build out there anyway. I'll give you a lease. It's a strip of land. You can have it anyway. And go ahead and build. So I said, okay, great, thanks, And a couple of days later, he calls up again. He said, oh, you're not going to believe it. I just got an offer from the Zabanese for $125,000 for this piece of land. And I'm really sorry, but I need the money. I've got to sell it. Unless you can come up with $125,000 within 48 hours. And he might as well say 10 million. Back then. So I just basically wrote it off in my mind. I called up Stella Chastain and said, Stella, not going to happen. Len Bowman owns the land. He's got an offer from the Zabanese, and it's gone. And she said, oh, we tried and all that kind of stuff. We talked a little bit, hung up. 2 minutes later, the phone rings, and it's Stella Chastain said, Holman, I need you $125,000. I'm like, what? So she did. The next day, FedEx comes to my door with $125,000 and said, go down to New Orleans where Len Bowman lived and buy that piece of property. So that's how I came about this piece of property here. So I don't know how far the details to get into it, but then there's a piece from where this gate is here, down to the South Beach, was owned by the Sisters of Mercy in Belize City. And so my theory is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So I bugged them, probably 3 or 4 years. Every time I go up to Belize City for any reason, I would go and pay a visit to them and tell them how much I wanted to buy the land. I wanted tell me the land, I want to buy the land. Finally, they said, oh, okay, you can buy the land, but you have to go and talk to our headquarters in the States. And I said, well, where is that? It's in Rhode Island. Rhode Island's in my backyard. So I made arrangements with that piece of land, told Stella about it, give her this, get the land. I invited some people in on it with me, the local people. Didn't kind of work out, and I decided, well, you know what? I needed cash to build this building and to build some of the cottages and so on. So I generated the money by selling out my interest in the property next door here. Big mistake in retrospect, but anyway, can't have it all, I guess. So they bought me out, and I built this building here. Since this building was built in, I think it was probably around the mid-'80s, or so now that this was built, it's probably been rebuilt 3 or 4 times at least. We have a constant battle out here with the termites. I know that this whole end, this wing here where you're in now, is going to have to be rebuilt this summer, or this fall, after our season closes. It's a constant battle with the elements. Now, the battle with the elements. So after I had this property now, everybody who were landowners on the island, had cut down their mangroves, had cleared the vegetation off the island, and they come to me and said, Fred, you got to do something. You can't leave those mangroves out there. They're cutting down the breeze. Nobody's going to come here. They're collecting all kinds of the Belize term is morass. They're collecting all kinds of garbage and stuff in the roots. Harbors flies. So I said, yeah, but you know what? If I cut that down, I'm going to have to be building cement walls like you are. But I'm going to have to be I'm going to be a constant battle against the sea. I'll let nature take care of it for me. And I lost nothing. In the 47 years I've been coming and going on South Water Caye, at this end here, I've lost absolutely nothing. If anything, we've gained a little by the mangroves, going further out. Where I have lost a little is back here. Not a lot, but you can see we had to put some stones and stuff in there too, a little bit to stop erosion. And what happens is, depending on which way the wind shifts, that'll all get covered over with sand again, and then the sand will get washed off. It just kind of like keeps coming and going. Down at the end, down here at the south end of the island, they stripped everything off. That beach used to be 200 or 300 feet long off that edge. And I've got pictures of it that I look at and go, wow. And now you see it's all boulders where they're trying to put it back. And that sandbar that you see that's coming out on the end now on that southwest end, when the storm gets right, which will be probably in May and June, the winds start coming out of the southwest here, all that sand will be put back on my rocks here. They're just borrowing it for a while. That'll all come back. All right, so then I kept the vegetation, as you can see. We just made little paths, and then what we eventually did is we put the pimento sticks to outline the paths, because people would take shortcuts and go through the vegetation. And vegetation on an island like this, it's like, it has a really, really tough time to get hold here, because it's basically just dry, hot sand. And, all our water, comes from the rain. And March, April, May can be completely dry. I'm sure that Barbara probably told you during the orientation, you'll take military showers. Under almost every building, we have gigantic vats, swimming pool-sized vats, to store water during the rainy season. And then we even have extra, along the back boundary, we have extra big tanks that hold, hundreds and some of the thousands of gallons of water. But believe it or not, even though you're taking a military shower, we come close to running out of water by the end of the dry season. And sometimes we've been so close that we're down to just a few barrels left. And then, thank God, it rains. And when it rains here, it can really rain. You can probably see. But in the rainy season, sometimes it'll rain like that for 4 or 5 hours, just coming out of the sheets. And it quickly fills up everything for us. So we're very, very dependent on that water. There are wells on the island. The island does have a a freshwater lens. You know, the freshwater floats on top of the saltwater. If it's not disturbed, you'll keep that lens. But what happens is, a lot of people on the island will dig these wells, and they pump the water out of them for toilets, because toilets can deal with brackish water. So then during the dry season, that freshwater lens disappears. And a lot of these plants, the plants that you see that are really well established here, are dependent on those freshwater lenses, during the dry season. So that's something too that has to be closely looked at, because you notice some of the big trees out here, the larger trees, they'll drop their leaves, which isn't indicative necessarily because of the freshwater lens disappearing. They do this anyway during the dry season to protect themselves. Belize, all throughout Belize, everybody says, oh yeah, we have a rainforest place here, we have a rainforest place there, but they really don't. It's really a semi-deciduous broadleaf forest. There is a marked dry season. Whenever rainforest, you have to have a certain amount of rain consistently throughout the year to be really classified truly as a rainforest. Belize has very little of that, and it's in the southern part of the country. Down in the Toledo district where Blue Creek is, they get 200 plus inches of rain a year. That's a lot of water. Out here on the island, you probably get about 40 to 50 inches of rain a year. Back on the mainland, about, I think it's around 60 or 80. And the reason is because the weather is coming out of the east to west, building up against the mountains here. And down at the Toledo area, the mountains come in from Honduras like this, and they come down from Belize like this, and they cause a box in. All the clouds get boxed in this area here. So today, where we probably have very little rain down in Blue Creek, we could have been pouring all day. Or it could be sunny, you don't know, but it does get a lot more rain than what we get out here. All right, we're about to go into that. Now we're talking about rain. Why don't I open it up to any questions? Anybody have any questions about the history of this island, about rainforests, about anything? Anything you can think of you'd like to see if I can help. I'll try and answer them for you.
Yeah, are you still a herpetologist? Do you still...
A quasi.
Do stuff?
I do. I actually still even have quite a few herps at home. Actually, some of them I've had since the 60s. And I'm waiting for them to die. But I have some specimens of things that are endangered that you need permits for. I can't give them away. I really have to keep them or destroy them. I'm not going to destroy them. So I've got things like a peaky lizard that I've had since 1967. The thing is still going strong. It was an adult when I got it. I'm only supposed to live to about 40 years, but it keeps going. I've got like alligator snapper and a few different snakes and some lizards and things that I have. I used to do a lot of lecturing with wildlife too, as well as when I'm in between during trips to the Belize. So I still have a love for it. If I'm still down in the rainforest, if I see a snake, something, I'll catch it, look at it, take pictures of it, let it go. I have an interesting story. I was here, one of my colleagues that works with me in the office, John, had never been to Belize, and I said, Belize, you got to come to Belize, check it out. So I took him down to Blue Creek, and we're walking up the trail at night. Blue Creek, it's about a half a mile walk to get into the field station is. And we're walking up this little trail, and he says to me, Ben, I haven't seen any snakes yet. Where are all the snakes? I said, well, John, this is pretty, snakes are very secretive. There's a lot of places for them to hide. They're here. But finding them is a different story. Just then, he says, Fred, there's a snake. And I looked, and there's like a 5 to 6 foot fertile lance. Oh, wow. Fertile lance are not nuts. So it was going across the trail. And I'm sure time to light on it. It went over the trail and down into a little hole in some rocks. So stupidly, if anybody should know, I should know. I take my flashlight and I'm looking down, looking to see where the snake went. The next thing I know, all I can see is this white and this open mouth coming right at my face. And I jump back, and John, of course, is he didn't look back for 100 yards. Anyway, so Anybody have anything else they'd like to add?
So the mangroves out here aren't like very deep. Have they always been that kind of shallow level? Have they gotten more shallow? Or have they
Well, it's actually
The water depth, you mean, or the depth?
The water depth, yeah. Yeah, the water depth. Well, actually, it's building. If you notice, in some of the areas here, the roots are catching enough detritus that's forming peat underneath, and also it has, a good sand base that's washing around. So the mangroves are actually moving out from the island. Very little bit, but they are moving out rather than disappearing.
That's good. So do you know when that property, that's the Pelican Beach, when did they replant their mangroves?
Quite a while ago. Actually, it was.
Because yours are quite a bit taller, so we measured them last time, and I think yours are about 10 feet taller.
Right. We had the only crop of mangroves, and then they started realizing what was going on, and they started planting mangroves. A lot of places that are planting mangroves, it's too late, because they've done so much damage, and there's so much energy, wave energy, on that shoreline. The seed pods can't get hold. They're blown right out again. I know that Caribou, they've been trying to plant mangroves everywhere, and it's been pretty much unsuccessful.
See, that's smart.
Yeah.
What do you do when you're not on the island?
Wishing I was here. No, actually, my office is back in Sherborn, which is about 25 miles west of Boston. And I'm back trying to get things organized, marketing, doing things to try to get more groups here and try to promote the business. Sort of. I should be doing more than I'm doing.
This is more like an infrastructure question. So I realized that in the cement walls that you had to build, there's glass bottles on the below it. Is that done on purpose?
I just realized that today. Yeah, Joanne just pointed that out to me. There were glass bottles in the cement. I have no idea. It was probably some sort of a large, I'm sure it's for no benefit at all. I can't imagine it could be of any use, but they probably rely on them when they mix up the cement and use it. But, and that was all done, I wasn't here at the time when that was done. So I didn't know about it, but that was no source of purpose. Anything, any question?
So yeah, we've been, climbing through the mangroves.
Sorry?
We've been, climbing through the mangroves, and the ones out here seem a lot sturdier than the ones on the other parts of the island. Is there some special way that you're pruning them or just taking care of them that makes that, or is it because they're older? Or?
No, actually, to be honest with you, I don't know why that is, but we're not pruning them to make them sturdier. The only pruning part is, if you see it, it's just kind of, you're sitting on a porch here, it's kind of at a level, so you do have a little bit of visibility, and you do have a little bit of breeze coming through without damaging the plant itself. Because the part that's really holding the island together, of course, are the roots. So, I don't know why, I never noticed that, so I don't know why they're going to be sturdier.
Do guests complain about the mangroves being in front of their house?
Nobody does, because I always explain to them why they're there. And once you realize why they're there, then they go, oh, good idea. So I've never, that I know of, and I'm not here all the time, but I've never had anybody that's complained about the mangroves. One time, I did have somebody say that, geez, I thought I saw a rat in the mangroves. I said, no, that's just a naked-tailed mangrove opossum. Oh, okay.
You can see an iguana the
I have to go and check that, because I've never seen an iguana, I haven't seen an iguana here for many years yet. But now it's either somebody brought it out and let it go, or,
it was pretty big. It wasn't half.
So it was just off the north side of the property. It was maybe a couple feet long.
it's orange looking.
Yeah.
It was gray with an orange spine.
Yeah, so that would be a male.
Yeah.
The females are more dark colored, they don't have any orange. So.
It was just
Yeah, they get, I have a picture of an iguana, a male, that I'm 6'2", and its head is above my head, its body is like this, and its tail is still curled on the ground. So I'm guessing it has to be at least 7 feet. There can be some big iguanas here.
Was that in Blue? Was that in like Blue Creek area?
Yes, yeah, it was, yeah. Anybody else? One? Going once, twice? Oh.
Do you know how ownership goes? Because like if you like go around, you can see that there's like so many other islands here too. Are the other islands here privately owned, or?
That's a good question. There's a good history about what's going on with the islands around here. I'll try to be brief. But, for example, Twin Keys. You went there with snorkel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Twin Keys was a government-owned island. And what happens is, when islands became very valuable, which they are now, they're basically priceless to buy land on an island like this now. Back in the days when I was here, they were very cheap. You could get almost anything you wanted to. So once the price went up, then the locals started grabbing pieces of mangrove swamps. Now there's hundreds of islands in the country of Belize. Only a handful of them are located directly on the barrier reef. Most of them are in the back lagoon areas. So, which Twin Keys is, Tobacco Range, when you went over here. So what happened is locals would buy up a 5-acre chunk from the government of Belize. And then they started clearing the mangroves and pumping sand onto the island. And to make it look pretty, plant some coconut trees, and then sell it to unsuspecting Californians and Texans who would come down, and they would buy them. I see them all the time. They're coming down, for example, Cocoa Plum Key, the island, the first island, when you were coming out here, the first island you saw on your left, that long strip of island, that's all broken apart now by storms. When I first came here, that was one big contiguous island, probably almost a mile long. And now it's all fragmented. Well, that was all purchased by gringos who wanted to come and own their own island in Belize. And they had no clue that clearing the mangroves, is clearing themselves of an island. And you go over to Thatch Key now, as each different person bought Cocoa Plum Key, it was known as Cocoa Plum Key. As each person bought it, they named it their own name. Okay, so it's got multiple names now, all the little fragmented pieces. But if you ever happen to go by there, you will see such vain attempts at keeping back the sea at huge expenses. There was even a gentleman I know from Texas who just sold his company for something like $33 million, bought an island, and now all he's doing is, those, I don't know what they call them, it's kind of like these big steel plates that you can hammer down into the ground. So he's got this ugly saw all around the island, trying to hold back the sea. But even that, it's not working. It's going over, it's eating away the sand on the other side, washing it off. So yeah, it's
Where are the geologists?
Do you know how local life is, or I guess how locals interact with because I said had a very short conversation with one of the guys that has grown up in this area. But what is that like? Do they just kind of grow up on one island and then I guess go wherever to find work?
yes. A lot of the locals here, like in Danbury, all of these people that work for us and work for other people on the islands and so on, are natives mostly of Danbury. And they've basically been born on the sea and on some of these islands since they were little kids. And they know it backwards and forwards. They're constantly changing, jobs all the time. Because they'll work for maybe 3 or 4 months or something, and then they get some money and they go, and then they come back and they'll work in another place. So we try to, our staff, has been with us for many, many years. Like Sherry in the kitchen has been with us for probably about 30, 35 years. Long, long time. And we get people that are really good and really dependable, and we pay them really well and take good care of them, and we keep them. But they do move around a lot. Anything else? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you do have any other questions, I'll be here for, I guess, a few more days. I'll be here as long as you will be, so come and find me, and I'll be happy to talk shop. Anything?
Thank
You're very welcome.